Imagine the most famous philosopher in history writing a dialogue whose entire purpose is to humiliate his own theory. That's the Parmenides. In it, Plato lets an old philosopher corner a young Socrates with a question so absurd, so undignified, that it threatens to bring down the whole edifice of the forms. Is there a form of mud? Plato signals from the very first page that this dialogue is a thought experiment, not history. The story reaches us through three narrators. A man tells us he heard it from another man, who heard it from a third, about a conversation that supposedly happened 50 years earlier. Nobody writes a real memoir this way. The triple frame is Plato's wink to the reader. What follows did not happen. It is a constructed scenario engineered to test an idea to its breaking point. Inside this carefully distanced frame, a debate begins. Zeno has just finished reading aloud a treatise defending his teacher Parmenides. Parmenides held a radical view called Eleatic monism. Reality is one, unchanging, indivisible. The pluralists scoffed. Obviously, the world contains many things that move. So Zeno mounts a defense by reductio ad absurdum. He doesn't argue for monism directly. Instead, he assumes the pluralist position and shows it generates impossible contradictions. If your view leads to nonsense, the opposite view stands. The weapon is logic. The target is the trustworthiness of the senses. The most famous example, Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles, the swiftest runner in Greece, races a tortoise that gets a head start. To overtake it, he must first reach the spot where the tortoise was. But by the time he arrives, the tortoise has crawled a little further. So Achilles must reach that new spot. By the time he does, the tortoise has moved again. The gaps shrink, but they never close. Logically, Achilles cannot catch the tortoise, yet your eyes tell you he obviously does. Zeno's conclusion is sharp. If logic and the senses disagree, the senses are the liars. Motion is an illusion. A modern reflex says calculus solved this. Infinite series can converge. Problem dismissed. But that misses what Zeno was doing. He wasn't asking how to sum a series. He was asking which faculty to trust when logic and perception conflict. Calculus describes the motion mathematically. It does not rescue the senses from Zeno's accusation. For Zeno, the lesson stands. Reason reigns. The visible world is a flickering, untrustworthy surface. A young man in the audience thinks he sees a way out. Socrates, about 18 years old, stands up. He offers a compromise. Yes, the many things we see are not fully real, but they aren't pure illusion either. They have a diminished kind of reality because they participate in forms. Forms are perfect, eternal patterns existing outside space and time. A beautiful flower is beautiful by participating in the form of beauty. A just act partakes of justice itself. Plurality and change live in the lower realm. Unity and permanence live in the higher. Both Parmenides and the pluralists, the young Socrates suggests, are partly right. But the old man isn't finished. Parmenides, now in his 60s, gently warns the youth he is not ready for this battle. Then he begins the questioning. A form of beauty? Yes, Socrates says. A form of justice? Of the good? Yes, yes. A form of the human being? Socrates hesitates, then agrees. Now Parmenides leans in. What about a form of hair, of mud, of dirt, of every cheap, undignified, repulsive thing? Socrates squirms. If participation is what makes anything real, then every existing thing demands a form behind it. The puddle of mud at your feet, the hair on your head. The trap snaps shut. There is no principled place to draw the line. Notice what Plato is doing. In the Republic and the Phaedo, Socrates is older and speaks of forms with serene confidence. Here, as a youth, he wavers. Parmenides even diagnoses why. The young Socrates still cares what others will think of him. He does not want to look ridiculous defending a form of mud. The hesitation is not philosophical weakness alone. It is social embarrassment leaking into metaphysics. Plato is showing us that the theory of forms has an edge case its young architect cannot face squarely. This is Plato auditing his own metaphysics. By casting Parmenides as interrogator and Socrates as the stumbling student, Plato dramatizes a genuine crack in the theory he spent his life building. If forms explain why anything exists, the explanation cannot stop at the noble things. It must cover the mud, the hair, the dirt, the trivial. And once it does, the forms lose the dignity that made them attractive in the first place. The dialogue stages the question that will haunt all later metaphysics. Where do you draw the line between what is real enough to have an essence and what is not? The hesitation of young Socrates is Plato's hesitation, and in the next videos, that hesitation deepens.